Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for your patience this morning. We had a few technical issues getting all the connectivity working and up to speed, so thank you very much for staying with us for the last few minutes. We have done a slight rejig of the agenda. All of the items that are on there will still be covered. They'll be a little bit more compact at the start of the day. I'll be your host for the day. My name is Ruth Jennings. I work for Sainsburys. I'm their Skills Development Programmes Manager. And I look after everything that is in the skills community for all of our colleagues across our 1,000 plus stores in Sainsburys and Argos. I am really pleased to be here to welcome you and to celebrate with you your birthday, because there'll be some great birthday celebrations taking place. This isn't an annual conference. This is a conference with meaning and purpose, and we wanted to wait as a SCQF partnership until we were in a position when we've got that forward-thinking view. And the 21st birthday, what could be better than that? My role at Sainsburys is about skills. It's about making sure we've got future skills. And I'm sure all of you out there are thinking and working out the complexities of the world that we live in. Brexit occurred. We've obviously got now all the challenges that are taking place in Ukraine, which are having a world impact, as well as being a horrific sight for us all to observe from a distance. We are seeing some absolutely changes in sectoral thinking. We've got the green agenda. COP26 was such an amazing success, and that was the start of a real pace of journey for us in the UK and around the world. It really kicked things forward. Our skills expectations of our colleagues have been changed. Our life learning and life employment expectations of the people in the UK have been changed due to COVID. There's never been a more time for change and a time to rethink and reconsider what we're looking at in the skills arena to help with productivity. Today's agenda is absolutely ram-packed with some great opportunities around recognising the skills, understanding, sharing some best practice, sharing some really good ideas, and hearing from some excellent speakers to actually help frame thinking and frame the way we're looking. We're going to hear from some prominent speakers relating to lifelong learning in Scotland, and there are loads of workshops, 2 sessions across the day, which I'd actively encourage you to take part in as we have those sessions booked through. I'll be back to give you a nudge when those sessions will be running. Well, there's a chance to contribute to the discussion, and we can make use of SQF in supporting skills recognition and learning. And as I say, we're going to hear from presenters that facilitate skills recognitions and rapidly changing environment sessions. We've got around about 338 delegates online, which is absolutely superb, considering we're doing everything in the remote world. And the registrations come from UK, Ireland, and international registrations. Welcome to everyone. Organisations across all of the sectors, including schools, colleges, universities, training providers, CLD, professional bodies, employers, credit rating bodies, and most importantly, we are really pleased to welcome lots of learners today. You're at the heart of everything that we do. We've got some fabulous sponsors that are supporting us throughout the day. You'll have seen their logos at the bottom strip. We've got College Development Network. We've got Scottish Training Federation, the Scottish Skills Services Council, Scottish Funding Council, Scottish Qualification Authority, Skills Development Scotland, and Youthlink in Scotland. Thank you so much for your support for today's event. And we'll be hearing from some of the speakers that are connected with those organisations as we move through the day. I'm now going to hand over in a few moments to Aileen, who's going to do the opening address. What I would say is this session is going to be recorded and will be available on the SCQF website, and also if you are using Twitter, use the hashtag SCQF 21 years, and it'd be really great to see us trending on Twitter. I'm going to pass over to Aileen.
Thank you very much, Ruth, and echoing Ruth's thanks for your patience this morning. I'm on heart attack number 3, and it's not just after 10:30, so thanks for bearing with us. We've looked at how we're going to condense this slightly because we do want to make sure that you get to hear everyone during the day. So my intro today was really just to celebrate that 21st birthday. One of the symbols that we often use for 21st is a key. And we've been talking quite a lot as a team in recent weeks about the fact that SCQF is key to education, training and skills sectors, but also that it has the potential to unlock opportunities for our learners. And I think today you'll hear some really good examples of how that happens. The vision of the SCQF, even at the very, very first day, was in the future, provided it comes with an appropriate quality assurance system and is subject to reliable and valid means of assessment, any short programme, module, unit or work-based learning has the potential to be credit rated. I think this is really important, that the whole vision for the framework, which was shared across Scotland, was not to have a regulatory framework, but to have an enabling framework, which really allowed us to recognise a whole range of qualifications from different sectors and of different sizes. And although during 2001 to 2006, the focus was on getting our mainstream qualifications in, so SQA qualifications and those of our universities, since 2007, we've really been working tirelessly to find ways of expanding the framework and using our partnership and the other stakeholders that we work with in order to be able to do that. And so I'm just going to pluck out a few milestones in that 21 years that have been really quite important for us. In 2007, our colleges were formally recognised as credit rating bodies in their own right. And we have a number of them online today, and also we have them in one of the workshops talking about what they're doing, but looking at how to maximise credit rating for a wide range of learners. And then in 2008, we opened up the criteria and looked to allow in other credit rating bodies. We now have another 7, and you'll hear shortly from John McDonald of Opito, which is one of our credit rating bodies. In 2016, we opened up the database, and we currently have 11,500 qualifications owned by over 300 organisations on there, which is searchable and allows people to check and understand the qualifications that we've got. In 2017, we launched the School Ambassador Programme, finding ways to support schools to understand the diversity of provision on the SCQF at appropriate levels and to help them develop new pathways and progression routes. Interest in this has been huge, and having moved our training online in 2020, we've currently got 157 schools trained and a waiting list. And again, you have the opportunity to hear firsthand from some of those in our workshops later. 2018 to currently, we've been looking more at how do you actually support skills recognition, not just qualification recognition, but skills recognition. And that's led us into supporting apprentices, migrants and veterans who might not have qualifications completed or qualifications that are easily recognised. And that's been a really important piece of work, and again is picked up in one of the workshops. Not forgetting employers, in 2019, we launched Inclusive Recruiter, which asks employers to advertise posts using the SCQF levels rather than specific qualification titles, opens up to a wider pool of applicants, supports fair work, and although interest during 2021 understandably dropped, we now have 31 employers signed up. And 2 of those employers, again, will be sharing their experience of that in the workshop. Over the last year, over 160 organisations and 435 individuals attended our workshops, the highest number since 2015, and reflects a move to bring these online and increase accessibility and bring in people from across the country who potentially might not have been able to travel and give up time to come to a workshop. So a whole range of milestones, and I'm sure when the Cabinet Secretary speaks later today, she will set out her own vision of the future direction for education, training and skills, and what calls she might make on the SCQF to support that. So my hope for today is that not only do you celebrate our milestones and our birthday, but you as delegates, along with our speakers and contributors, also make suggestions for what milestones you might like to see over the next 21 years. We honestly believe that the framework and our use of it should and must evolve in order to meet the needs of the changing education, training and skills landscape, which I'm sure most of our contributors today will touch upon. I want to thank our chair for agreeing to support this event and our board members who not only helped shape the vision of the conference, but are hosting our workshops this morning and this afternoon. And I'd like to thank my team for helping put together what I think hopefully is an exciting agenda with many opportunities to learn and to share. And I hope that during the course of today, you find either information or advice or exemplars that provide you with a new key to unlock even greater learner potential. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for staying with us this morning. And I'll pass you back now to Ruth.
And thank you for bringing to life the milestones that have been completed so far, but also that forward lens. The time is right for change. The time is right for innovation. The time is right to really reset the agenda around skills. And it's great to see the work that SCQF are playing in this arena. I'd now like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, John McDonald, who's the CEO of Opito. I can't have said that wrong, John. I'm very sorry. It's a global skills body of energy industry and credit rating body for SCQF. John's going to be talking to us for around about 20 minutes, and there's a real opportunity for questions. So I'd encourage you to put them in the chat, and I'll be facilitating those at the end of John's session. John, as a CEO, is a global skills and Global Safety and Skills Organisation for the energy industry. In his role, he focuses on driving the international skills agenda for the energy sector, and that's something very close to all of our hearts, especially with everything that's going on at the moment. The development of safe and skilled workforce through the delivery of global standards and high quality skills development, workforce development solutions, and by leading dialogue and industries and governments across the UK, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific and Americas. Is also currently leading the publication of an integrated people and skills plan as part of North Sea Transition Deal. Prior to joining the business, John was director of Activate, the government body charged with creating a vocational education and training system in Abu Dhabi. John was also a director of Scottish Qualifications Authority, leading the developments of the new products and services and creating new markets in Asia and the Middle East. Some really strong credentials, some real great passion around skills and energy. I'm going to hand over to you, John.
Thank you. So thank you very much for that very, very detailed introduction. Clearly you have read my CV. Thank you for that. Pleasure to be here today with everyone. And thank you, SCQF, for the invitation. And yes, I'd like to say happy birthday to SCQF too. And yeah, 21 traditionally is when you got the key of the door. And I think, what we think at Opito and in the energy industry is that really what this organization has done is provided the key to unlocking potential for learners, for the workforce, no matter what age. And that's a fantastic achievement. I was around when this was kicking off, this project, and I remember thinking how challenging this was, taking school, college, university, and workforce qualifications and bringing them all together so that we could have some sort of currency. And really, it's just incredible what's been achieved in 21 years. So well done for that. And, for us in our industry, the reason we came to talk to SCQF was about transferability. It matters to us. So, and how we explain it to our workforce is, imagine if you had to resit your driving test every time you took a driving holiday overseas. And also that exchange rates matter. So we use a simplified kind of, what would the global finance system look like if we didn't have reliable exchange rates? How does gold compare to silver? And that's how we take a fairly complex to a complex landscape for people who are not involved in education and training and explain this to our workforce. We say that, qualifications are the hard currency of learning and skills. They are earned, they have value, and they must be transferable on the open jobs and talent market. So as the CEO of Opito, as was said earlier, the global skills body for the energy industry, around 400,000 people a year undertake Opito standards, Opito qualifications. And from there, we need to make sure that they have the same value no matter which country of the world, which area of the world they're undertaking. And that's where SCQF supports us in the framework in Scotland. And if you've heard me speak before, I'm a big fan of meta frameworks, and we'd like to see more of those. We're keen, where we work in Asia Pacific, where we work in the Americas and the Middle East, bringing frameworks together is a really positive thing. And I know there's a lot of work that Aileen and the team are doing around this in the Middle East at the moment, which is great. So as well as celebrating birthday of SCQF, a couple of other anniversaries. One, 2 years of living dangerously with COVID, and the last 24 months have been dominated by one story, and that's, of course, lockdown, which I think is this Saturday, the anniversary of the first lockdown in the UK. And I think through that time, we had a plan for digitization of our products and assessment. And I think the plan was for 18 months, and we brought it in 2.5 weeks because we had to. We had to change the way we were doing things. Now, the other thing that's been happening to us, and Ruth mentioned it earlier, is the North Sea transition deal. Now, this is about how do we drive the oil and gas industry's transition to clean, green energy in a secure future. And we're, as a skills body, we're central to that. And this is why we're doing it. It's for our skilled oil and gas workers and the supply chain, thousands of engineers and technicians, project managers, consultants. And we're living through this huge time of historic change, and it can seem stressful and tumultuous. For many people, it's about, will I have a job? What does my future career look like? But I think the answer to this is through transition to clean energy, and we're very much behind this. And in November, Scotland hosted COP26, and there's no question that COP26 will go down as a turning point in human history. So I think Scotland's energy sector took the opportunity to excite the world around that, huge achievements and ambitions in clean energy. And we had an inspiring story to tell as the home nation about the huge acceleration towards net zero and how we're setting an example. So the energy sector being at the forefront of carbon reduction while ensuring our energy supply remains secure, sustainable and safe. And I know this is very topical given what's going on in the rest of the world at the moment. And I'm not sure if you know, but we've halved our carbon emissions since 1990. We've still got a way to go in this, but we've generate more of our electricity from renewables than any other nation in the world. Well, we have to accelerate that ambition as well. And we're rapidly moving towards a more integrated energy system. So you used to be talking about skills for renewables, skills for wind, for nuclear, for carbon capture, for hydrogen, skills for oil and gas. And now we're talking about common energy skills, and that's the direction of travel for our industry. So the new energy industry based on wind, carbon capture, green hydrogen. And we're seeing net zero as a huge opportunity rather than an existential threat. And technology is playing such an important part in this, particularly delivery of training and assessment, virtual, online, and moving away from that classroom model that we've been involved in for so long now. But it's people who are front and centre, isn't it? I know that we're all going to agree in that. And they have been in their previous industrial revolutions too. So all our previous energy transitions from wood to coal to oil to nuclear have depended on humans their creativity, imagination, and expertise. And it's people then who will reshape our energy system. And the UK is in pole position to achieve this, because we're genuinely leading the world in net zero energy and the green recovery from COVID-19. So I've said it's the human factor that's decisive here in turning our ambition into reality, and our people and their skills then. So we need to make sure that we create the right platform for green skills, jobs and careers, meeting the demand. And there are big questions here about demand. And there's also big questions about what people are looking for in their career. I think there's a much broader range of asks now than we saw previously. And we want to make transferability of skills across the energy sector a reality at all levels. So, if I want to move to wind or to hydrogen, what are the skills that are recognised at the moment, and where are the gaps? How do I plug them? Now, those the easiest way to recognise these skills is actually through a framework. We've got multiple bodies, multiple qualifications here. It's the framework. So it's SCQF. That's the solution for there. And SCQF is front and centre in the just transition model as well. So in Scotland, we're signed up to a just transition for the workforce. And I think SCQF, again, an invaluable role to play, not least through its genuine leadership in developing pathways and progression routes for skills recognition, but through the clear principles and guidance it establishes for all credit rating bodies, of which we are one, and very proud to be, ensuring quality, I think, and trust in the national framework. So as I said earlier, we're Opito. We're the global skills body for the energy industry. We have 200 training providers, accredited providers, a bit like private training providers, but we have these, I think it's 230 now across the world. And we operate in the world's energy capitals, Aberdeen, Houston, Kuala Lumpur, Dubai, and we've got that approved credit rating body status. Why was that important? Because we were seeing all of this training happening within integrated energy companies, and yet when you went to another company for another job, you kind of lost the value of your training. So that's why we wanted to get involved in this. So our job is to provide global safety training and skills standards and qualifications, originally for the hydrocarbon industry, but we're stepping up and playing a role, as Ruth said, in the North Sea transition deal. So this is the UK government and Scottish government backed deal, an investment of 16 billion, aiming to support 40,000 jobs in the sector. So we've got a huge amount of hard-earned competency in the workforce and oil and gas supply chain, and it will serve the clean energy sector well, in offshore wind, hydrogen, etc. And we know that a great many people currently working in oil and gas already have the skills and knowledge required for transition. And I was looking at this yesterday, and I think it's over 90% of the people in oil and gas have medium to high skills that can transfer to clean energy. So we have a strategy now to make our people ready for this brave new world. And we can ensure that we are ready for that great energy transition by delivering our own skills transition. In the UK, we've already decarbonised faster, as I said, than any other country in the last 20 years. And we're confident we can deliver. And there's a place for everyone that wants to be part of the solution. So for oil and gas, and I think in our own apprenticeship programme, we've noted a dip in numbers over a number of years here in terms of interest. And what we're saying to young people is, we want you to be part of the solution here in a cross-energy approach here. So we are working with policies around, Scottish Government's Climate Emergency Skills Action Plan, and also, of course, the Green Jobs Task Force too. So getting this right, getting things level credited, using that framework for ladders and bridges, shows, well, really hundreds of thousands of livelihoods depend on it. right across our world-class supply chain. And we've got to inspire and excite young people to become the next generation of energy workers. And that's really important to us too. The other thing I'd want to say as well is that, we've been doing this for 50 years, keeping rigorous standards in the industry, focusing on practical skills, usually in a scheduled training slot in a physical training centre, 100% classroom-based, almost until very recently. And that kind of e-learning, live instructor, video tutorials, we want to enhance and supplement any on-site classroom work that we need. So, and the work that SCQF has been doing around recognising skills and people from non-traditional backgrounds or with non-traditional skills experience really helps us too. Micro-credentials, absolutely, yes, please. And if we could get a national system around this, national recognition, this would be fantastic. And I'm delighted to acknowledge the leadership that SCQF is providing around this, as well as recognition of prior learning. You can imagine someone who's been in the oil and gas industry for 40 years, it's a big thing for us. So, in summing up then, our just transition to a net zero UK energy industry and a climate resilient economy is ongoing and accelerating. And moving rapidly to that requires us to maximise the agility and adaptability of our workforce. And that's where Opito and SCQF are both active champions. Ensuring transferability of skills is paramount, and it turns our vision for a new skills landscape into a competitive reality, enabling us to deliver the net zero energy that the world wants and needs. So I'm going to stop there and hand you back to Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John, and thank you for bringing to life the world that you operate in, the forward thinking which reassures all of us, because we're all energy consumers, the way that ladders and bridges bring everything together, and your support for next generation, and the transition that you've made between blended, where you were at the start of all of the COVID challenges and where you are now. We have two questions, and I'm conscious that we do want to answer those. And what I'd suggest, we've got a great question from Kirsty Livingstone around meta frame. What is a meta framework? That's in the chat, and a question from Stuart McKenna around numbers that have dropped in apprenticeships. What I'm going to suggest is we answer those in the chat box, and then we publish that so that we can all consume those answers after we've had the break. We're now going into, I'm going to suggest we have a 7-minute break so that we then come back online at 11:05 so that we can then move into our panel discussions. Okay, so if we'll get those answers to you via the chat, and we'll pick them up after the break. I would strongly advise you to keep everything on and go and disappear away, because any connectivity causes great anxiety. During the break, we're also going to be playing some video clips which showcase many of the frameworks that are being used. So grab yourself a brew and come and enjoy the video clips, and we'll be back online at 11:05. Thank you very much, John.
John Paul Academy is a school for everyone, and this is something that is very important to us. And for the school to be truly inclusive, it is crucial we treat pupils as individuals. It's not our job to only teach the pupils who want to engage in the traditional education system. And whilst there is room for that, we do also have a responsibility to all other pupils too, and to learn about their talents and their passions and harness that to create a learner pathway that suits them. Everyone is good at something. That's why working with the SCQF partnership has been such a brilliant experience, as it really allows for us to ensure that we can offer such a broad range of qualifications in our school.
When we talk about improving and increasing positive destinations in our school, we really need to look at the curriculum offer. And that curriculum offer has to meet the needs of the young people in our school. Being part of the SCQF programme has allowed us to to move confidently into changing away maybe something from the traditional qualifications and really looking into the job market and ensuring that our young people are as best qualified as possible.
I'm really enjoying the exercise and fitness course because it's practical and I get to do stuff that I enjoy, such as exercise and fitness. Half of the course we're in the class learning about the body, learning about different muscles and how to use them properly, and the other part of the course is practical, so we get to go to the gym and do workouts and take younger kids through workouts. The SCQF has helped me in discovering that there's not just one pathway, and I'm hoping to get into personal training as I've learned that there's different pathways and physical education.
What I enjoy most about the courses is how there's a different variety. There's practical, which I probably prefer, and there's also theory, like mental health and stuff. But I probably prefer cake bake, as I do have my own business. The courses help me run the business because I think that you need to be very organised. So the SCQF has helped me because being in cake bake and seeing all the different things that you can expand on with cake bake has actually made me want to apply to events management in university.
There are so many benefits of being part of the SCQF partnership, and one of them is being an ambassador school. Having pupils on the ground being able to share information with other learners about the SCQF programme and all the different qualifications and types of qualifications that they can get, going into different classes, and they have been putting together some case studies to send home to parents so that parents understand the benefits of it as well. It's really helped us not just widen the curriculum, but allow for pupils to recognise that these qualifications are very valuable, so therefore the uptake in the widening of the curriculum has been massive as well. So we now have huge cohorts going through lots of different qualifications from level 4 to level 6 in our school that were not there 3-4 years ago.
I have introduced the Mental Health and Wellbeing Award into John Paul Academy due to how accessible it is. The course has had a massive impact on the curriculum across the school. Young people are taught fundamental life skills that will help them when they leave school. We have taught them how to have a growth mindset to help them adapt when they are sitting exams and prelims. The course does not have an exam at the end of the year and is evidence-based, so that means that the young people can use their strengths to access the curriculum. And we also have a wide range of EAL pupils that take the course, and due to the fact that the course allows them to have open-ended discussions for their evidence base, they can express themselves as freely as they want.
If you look at the current job market and growth industries, things are changing out there really quickly, and lots of our young people will go on to do jobs that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. If the world of work is changing so rapidly, education needs to keep up with that too, or we'd be doing our learners a real disservice. Having the SCQF partnership so present in our school has allowed for us to continue to get it right for every child.
I would recommend being an SCQF ambassador school to any school in Scotland if they truly want to enhance the curriculum offer and really prepare our young people to go into society and take their place.
My name's Ewan Hay, I'm a director at Opito, the skills organisation for the energy industry. My role at Opito is to work with energy stakeholders to develop standards and qualifications that employers can use around the globe. Becoming an SCQF accrediting body is a significant milestone for Opito and further recognises its work alongside its stakeholders to develop a skilled energy workforce across the globe. By achieving this status, we can add further value to Opito standards and qualifications and enhance our offering to industry. We believe SCQF credit rating body status provides significant value to the products and qualifications that we offer. It allows us to credit rate our standards and qualifications, therefore providing significant value to employees and employers in the energy industry who utilise our programmes. This also provides benefits to organisations in the transferability of achievements of personnel. Training is benchmarked and certificated against an internationally recognised framework. Whilst we're very much at the beginning of this process, we also have ambitions to become a third-party credit rating body, which will provide additional value to the organisations that work in the energy industry. This will allow them to have their learning programmes rated by a trusted industry organisation, thereby providing their employees with recognition for their achievements. Becoming a credit rating body is an integral part of our commitment to ensuring a safe and skilled energy workforce. We have developed robust quality assurance processes to ensure that we met the criteria during the 9-month approval process. We would absolutely encourage other organisations to become credit rating bodies. Credit rating and learning programmes shows a clear commitment to the lifelong learning of employees. As the industry progresses the energy transition agenda, employees are continually seeking qualifications that are transferable across sectors. The SCQF is recognised across industries and is connected to a wider range of qualification and credit frameworks around the world. This benefits the workforce, providing flexibility and mobility. The support provided by the SCQF team throughout the process was hugely beneficial. Right from the start of the process, the team were available, providing us with advice and support on our approval application. This included early workshops by the team at our premises, as well as training of our employees that were part of the credit rating process. We especially appreciated their willingness to connect us with other credit rating bodies within the network. The advice received from other credit rating bodies was invaluable to us in our approval process. At Opito, we're very grateful for the advice and support provided by the SCQF team, which enabled us to achieve our goal of becoming an SCQF credit rating body.
Brilliant. And welcome back, everyone. Some really insightful video clips there and some really good food for thought. I'm always impressed how much people can get done in a 5-10 minute break. I'd like to wonder who's managed to get their washing out during this window of opportunity, along with a brew. So welcome you back to the next session, which is a panel session. Aileen will be hosting the panel session to consider current and emerging changes in the skills landscape and how the SCQF could support these. She's going to be introducing the panel and will monitor and take questions and throughout the session, probably running the Q&A right at the end, and then we'll come back together as a whole before we move to the next stage, which is the first series of workshops. Aileen, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Good morning again to everyone. In my opening remarks this morning, I was reflecting back on the milestones, or some of the milestones over the last 21 years. But this panel session is intended to help me look forward. And I think it's probably fair to say that notwithstanding the pandemic, there's also been a period of real change within education, training and skills. And we know from various things that will continue over the next few years. So there's lots of change still to come. And so I wanted to explore with the panel some of the challenges and some of the opportunities there might be through 3 very different lenses, 3 very different perspectives. So I'm delighted to be able to introduce the panel to you. We have James Dunphy, Director of Access, Learning and Outcomes at the Scottish Funding Council. I've got Tim Frew, Chief Executive at Youthlink. And I've got Sara, Thiam, Chief Executive Officer of SCDI. So 3 great contributors, 3 very different landscapes to talk about. But I've asked them to ponder on the same 2 questions. So the 2 questions that they've been asked to think about are what are the changes they expect to see in education, skills and training in the future from where they sit in the landscape. And then the second is how could the SCQF be used to support these? So do we need to think differently about what we do and how we do it? And we've asked them to take some time to respond to that, but leave time for questions. And as Ruth said, we'll be monitoring that in the chat function. So please do. And it would be helpful if you could indicate whether the question is for one of the panel in particular, or whether it's a more general question that you'd quite like to hear a response to. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass over to the first of our panel to pick up on those 2 questions, and that's James Dunphy.
Well, good morning, colleagues, and happy birthday, SCQF. 21 years, what a fantastic achievement. And Aileen and team have done us proud, not just today on the conference, but over the course of the development of Scotland's Credit and Qualifications Framework, a framework which, when it was but a twinkle in a developmental eye, was truly ambitious. And I can tell you, having travelled to different parts of the world, listening to people trying to create a framework which encompasses academic learning with vocational learning, learning which takes place in the workplace with learning which takes place in a college or university. We are truly grateful and fortunate to have the SCQF here in Scotland. So happy birthday, Aileen and team. Thanks also for the commission, which, as Aileen said, is to share really what are just some thoughts with you. So my thoughts are no more insightful than yours as you're about to learn. But I'm grateful to you for the attention, and I hope giving you a sense of some of the things that as a funding council we feel are interesting and important over this next period gives you some opportunity to pause, to reflect, and also in your engagement with us today through the panel, but also more importantly as we engage with many of you through our normal work, that they are an opportunity to stimulate some debate. I wanted to kick off really by saying that if we think ahead over the next period, I would hope that it is not quite as tumultuous, certainly as we've seen in the last couple of years through COVID. But I think even if we think the next 2 years might be a bit more smooth in some areas of our lives, we can assume, I think, quite safely that a constant that we can expect to see into the future is change, and a need for us to continue as humans, as employees, as learners, to adapt to change to be successful. And actually, I'm quite upbeat about this in so many ways. Whilst there's a lot to be down about, I think if the pandemic teaches us anything, it is that we are adaptable, that we can rise to different challenges, and that we are also resourceful. But I'm also fairly positive that we should design for ourselves the best support system, the best infrastructure, and empower ourselves with the best start through good design and excellent delivery of an education and skills system that not only we, but all others in our society deserve. And for me, that is the guiding light, if you think of what we're trying to do in our Scottish education and skills system over this next period. And in 2019, the Scottish Funding Council was asked by Scottish ministers to review the coherence and sustainability of our education offer. And through this, we've set out an ambition, which is to develop a more tertiary approach to post-16 education and skills provision, where providers work more closely together with each other, with employers and with learners to design, develop and deliver courses and programmes in ways which harness learner talent, which inspire learning and which enable individuals to secure success in their lives and in their work. And it goes without saying, to deliver this ambition will take all of us to work hard as we are used to doing, but much more importantly to work together and to work with clear purpose to deliver what people need. And key pieces of our infrastructure, as I would call them, national assets, such as the SCQF, will have an increasingly important role to play in this work. If we are interested in how providers work together, if we're interested in how our system functions and delivers for people, then that national asset and infrastructure becomes much more important. And in the future, we want to see opportunities created for learners of all ages and stages, whether post-school or in work, whether in the broad general education or whether in the senior phase across Scotland. And again, assets such as SCQF have, if you like, an umbrella benefit for us if we think of the system as being a system and we think of where we might be able to improve it in the future. And for us then, as a funder of colleges and universities, this will mean we will be deeply interested in more strategic join-up across the infrastructure that designs and delivers college and university provision. We'll be interested in more meaningful collaboration across partners and stakeholders that is responsive to learners and the economic, cultural and social needs of Scotland. We'll be interested in what is working well, in celebrating success and in enabling our system to deliver in a way which responds to need and is inclusive. And as we do that, we are really interested in some of the big drivers that as employers, as individuals and as members of families we can all see. These are things like climate change and the goal of net zero. There are things like fair access to natural resources. They are things like the imperative to create a fairer economic model driven by values but backed by people having the skills they need to lead their lives well, to be successful and to secure the economic and personal value that they need, they want and they deserve. And finally, for us, as you might expect, data. The volume, type and availability of data in existence will change our understanding of how the system performs, and it will change our understanding of how people want to and do move through the education and skills system, and it should provide us with much to reflect on around the types of pathways that are in demand and that we might wish to see develop into the future. It's no secret probably that for all of us our digital skills have developed over the period of the pandemic, but actually we want to capitalise on that across our college and university system, and increasingly digital is seen as a core and key part of the education offer. And again, the SCQF teaches us much about this, about that ability to package up learning and access it perhaps from different providers in a way that suits your needs, suits your desires, and suits where it is you want to take your career. There's much in the early thinking of the SCQF as it was 21 years ago that we can actually apply into the future. I'll say something, if it's okay, about where I think the SCQF can play a real part into the future. I've said, and I hope you get the sense that I am a major fan of the SCQF. I see it as one of our national assets, and if anything, I think it has a more important role to play into the future as we all think about a system and how it can deliver for people and for Scotland. It is vital to our ability to respond to a changing environment, and it provides us both with a pillar of constancy as we flex other things. It helps us to think about how it is that pathways can be built and how learners can move between and around pathways in ways which suit their needs. I think it should also prompt us to think about the pedagogic model and the ways in which learners may engage into the future. There is much reflection, I think, that we can have around the value of work-based learning and how work-based learning can develop into a broader suite of learner experiences in the future. And there's also, I think, learning around flexibility for learners. So is there opportunities, and do we have the right major pathways for learners to build pathways which work for them, which take the value in the SCQF and enable that flexibility. And of course, as we move ahead with the SFC review, and we also see government consider its response to the Muir review, it is important that we see the role of the SCQF and the way in which it can enable the join-up, which we also dearly are working for in our education and skills system. We are delighted to fund the SCQF partnership. We think it has an important role today, but also into the future. And Aileen and team, we look forward to working with you into the future as you continue your great work. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much, James. I mean, I'm sure we're going to hear some common themes across the three, but interesting, and we'll come back to that at the end, about learner expectations and about the growth of work-based learning and the need to create new pathways and routes. I think that is a very common theme. But thank you very much for the input. Thank you very much for the happy birthday wishes too. And now I'm going to hand over to Tim.
Thanks very much, Aileen, and I want to just echo the comments that have already been said by James in terms of congratulating the SCQF, and also just from the youth work and CLD sector. I think sometimes a sector that can be forgotten across the wider educational ecosystem. I think the SCQF have never forgotten actually that wider access and opportunities through those sectors. So thank you for that. Something that I wanted to say in terms of looking forward, one of my favourite thinkers is Toffler, and one of his quotes says that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn and relearn. And while speaking to an audience like this, I obviously do want to reinforce the importance of literacy and numeracy. I think that concept of learning, unlearning and relearning is something that is really important as we go forward and as we crystal ball gaze into the future of education. Because unlearning, perhaps surprisingly, is a little bit difficult, I think, for an education sector where old habits can sometimes die hard, and reform is difficult. We have clearly a coherent vision around curriculum for excellence, around many of the things that will have been mentioned, and I'm sure mentioned throughout this conference. But clearly, from Ken Muir's report and post the OECD report and post-COVID, we need to unlearn some things, I think. And so I'm going to kind of proposition 5 or 6 things we might need to unlearn. One of those is the assumption, we need to unlearn the assumption about curriculum for excellence that we have kind of realized that vision. I think we have focused too much on, successful learner and not thought about those other 3 capacities. And post-COVID, post the exams and assessment merry-go-round from a young people's point of view that they experienced, and with mental health and well-being paramount, those other capacities, and especially confident individual and health and well-being, understanding the importance of that is going to be kind of fundamental. So in Ken Muir's report, he talks about, 1 in 3 secondary school learners who responded to the survey agreed that they were having the best possible education experience, and that only about half had the view that education helped them in terms of developing their personality, talents, and abilities to their fullest potential. Those are quite stark kind of comments that we really need to think about. So recognizing and realizing the impact of curriculum for excellence, and turning it into reality. A second thing I think we need to unlearn is some of our nomenclature, some of our rhetoric around person-centered learning. And I don't say that to unlearn it because it's not important. I say because we've said it a lot and haven't always backed it up. And I think there's a real opportunity going forward in terms of relearning that as a rights-based approach to education. So the context for young people's rights, the context of the UNCRC, but for all learners as well, getting from a kind of nice to do to involve learners in some of their journey and co-creation towards a true shared understanding with young people about their outcomes is really key. One of the things I often pick up on is the National Improvement Framework, and not having young people as a kind of one of the drivers for improvement, and yet they're the key stakeholder. We need to unlearn, and I think this is going forward, silo working. And again, COVID has shown the wonderful possibility of more collaborative approaches, people stepping into different roles for different purposes in this difficult period, people stepping offline, online, and doing learning in different contexts. And one of the exciting things about the Youth Work Education Recovery Fund that we were responsible for from the Scottish Government was that we very much put voluntary organisations and local authorities and youth workers together and realised some fantastic results around that Youth Work Education Recovery Fund. So more of that. I think thirdly, we need to unlearn dependency on the mainstream. Whatever we mean with the mainstream, I think that's always a tricky word, and create a wider range of pathways and opportunities, something that the SCQF has very clearly in its aim and ambition and has always had. So again, if we're identifying youth work opportunities, youth work awards, different contexts for learning, there could be a much greater role in the senior phase, and also adult learning awards in the community learning and development space. How do we make more of these awards? And for me, it's about SCQF as a pivotal role to play there, because that parity of esteem for all learning underneath the framework is absolutely huge. And it's not about all these different pedagogies or contexts for learning fitting into something. It's about often those being innovators and disruptors actually are trying different things, and that's still though being recognised as a key part of the ecosystem. I think we need to unlearn the hierarchy of academic measurement only. So there's been a lot of work done on that. Results day, the National Achievement Day. Can we make it the National Achievement Day instead, or the National Achievement Week? Can we celebrate? Can we talk about these wider qualifications, these wider experiences in learning? I often describe it as that we have some of these non-academic qualifications and experiences and learning opportunities in our peripheral vision, and we need to bring it into kind of clearer focus. There's no time to leave these things to the side. And employers, talk about character, attributes, and skills for the future as much as they talk about, purely academic qualifications. And finally, I think we need to unlearn our kind of technophobia. I don't think it is technophobia. I think it's kind of a scare or a concern about how we use technology and digitalization. There's a real democratization of learning that's happening. And anyone that supported children and young people through the period of being offline, but also having to get resources from different places online, that opened a whole opportunity for creativity around learning. So if we think about digital maker spaces and how we pull colleges and businesses and schools and youth work opportunities together around that creativity, I think there's a real tremendous opportunity, but there's a real recognition, or there must be a recognition a challenge for all of the workforce to kind of keep up to speed with those skills and to do that. Beyond classroom learning, I think it was, James mentioned as well about the, climate change, sustainable jobs, sustainable growth. Again, huge opportunities to use the outdoors and to experience nature and to whet the appetite of learners for the future. So how can SCQF support these changes? I think you're already doing it. It's very much built into your aims and your purpose, but it is about culture change and leading the culture change. So for me, recognition and parity has been a big part of SCQF. It's not just a framework, it's a map, it's a gateway to a world to say, this is who I am, this is how I relate to the system. It's a tool that can promote parity of esteem and play a central role in the learner journey. I think even though many of these folk are on your board, and I'm sure we connect in through forums and so on as well, we need to challenge monopolies and mainstreaming of provision. So I think the importance of the independence of SCQF is really important in that space, to be able to say, well, who are the conveyors of learning? It's important that we democratise that as well. Breadth and depth has always been part of, we talk about that in the senior phase, but it's always been part of what the framework's about, levels and credits, different pathways. I would love to see the SCQF have funding to step into that space even more to support the kind of things like participatory budgeting certificate that we're about to do along with other partners and give credit and qualifications and recognition for that. So let's make the learner journey. We know it's not a linear one. We know it's a zigzag, but we don't want it to be a snakes and ladders exercise where you kind of, drop down and you don't know where you are on that framework. Let's make it a kind of fun 3D dimensional SCQF framework for the future, that you kind of step into that space and you recognize and know where you are and who you are in the system. And it can be a pathway through that to some of the big vision and goals that we all share. And I will stop there.
Thank you, Tim. Really good to hear that. And yeah, we've always been a strong supporter, as you say, of youth work and CLD because we see it as one of the actual original visions of the SCQF was about how do we value learning of all kinds and how do we value it equally? Let's get rid of hierarchies and how do we actually bring into scope any kind of learning that's assessed and is quality assured, but allows people to take that on board. Interesting points about the 4 capacities. I thought that was interesting. And about our independent, probably worth just, I'm sure the Cabinet Secretary will pick it up, but we were very pleased that notwithstanding Ken Muir's report, and he was very complimentary about our work, that the response from the Cabinet Secretary was that we should stay as an independent organisation, that was really, really important, that neutrality, that ability to work across sectors and to be that kind of neutral voice. And so we're very pleased to hear that. I've got a couple of questions coming in, but please give me some more. But as our final contributor, last but certainly not least, in bringing us, again, that different perspective, I'm going to hand over to Sara.
Aileen, thank you very much indeed for having me along today. And I'm sitting here nodding furiously along with Tim and James and the points that they've made. As somebody who started their career at the predecessor body for Youthlink, and one of the things which attracted me to SCDI was that kind of shared value around lifelong learning. So I'm thrilled to be joining you today. So really, SCDI is a unique coalition of public, private and voluntary sector partners who like to take that longer view and who like to see the bigger picture. And like SCQF, we share that independence and impartiality and not being tied to any special interests, which enables us to take that wider view. So we asked our members what the global economy of 2030 might look like, in which Scotland aims to be successful, obviously, and how we might ensure that Scotland's economy grows to take advantage of those developments in technology that both Tim and James have referred to. But whether that's for health or to achieve net zero, how can we ensure our economy and society is resilient to sort of future shocks that we've been through this last couple of years? And how can we build that much more inclusive society which reduces those inequalities that are becoming ever more evident because of the last couple of years. So our blueprint is called Making a Good Living. And I think, we've talked quite a bit this morning already about what we've learned the last couple of years, but what we're hearing loud and clear is that it is no longer acceptable to compartmentalise economic success, environmental sustainability and social cohesion and individual well-being in that world of increasing inequalities. So we need growth in our economy, but not at any cost. So they told us that Scotland needs economic growth which considers the human and ecological impacts of growth. And in other words, we recognise that need to achieve the well-being economy, and the skills that James and Thiam have already talked about will be very much needed. We know what the skills challenges are. We've talked about them a bit already. Transition to net zero, a truly digital society, but we have an ageing population. We have to embed that resilience to future shocks, and we need to tackle those social and regional inequalities in Scotland. But I think we understand much better that interdependence and that interconnection of the world that we live in, and that we are all and will increasingly be mutually dependent. So there's an opportunity, I think, to do things differently and to seize the moment to accelerate that change. And our education and skills landscape has a lot of the right ingredients. But frameworks like SCQF are really the glue which helps much of it hang together and enable us to move around it. But first and foremost, like SCQF, that value that we share is that working together across sectors, geographies and interests. So we identified 3 themes that we, our members rather, who are our real experts, 3 themes that we thought would help Scotland grow. So Scotland really needs to be a living lab for innovations. The pace of change is so fast, but that living lab for innovations is creating economic growth while it's being socially and environmentally useful. So we're learning by doing. Secondly, we talked about an opportunities and a culture which values that learning throughout life. So you can see why SCQF is so important, particularly given the kind of transitions that our economy is undergoing and has to undergo really fast. That new revolution, that new industrial revolution, the 4.0. And then thirdly, we talked about an economic growth, about fostering an economic growth and addressing inequalities by being a healthy place for Scotland to have lots of healthy places to live and to work that's going to attract and retain investment by global business and also attract those highly skilled people that we need. We're short of people in Scotland and we can't afford to not make the most of the talents of the people that we already have here. But that's going to require partnership and stewardship from each of us, from our communities, at work and at home, locally and globally. So to come back to that, focus a wee bit more on that opportunities and a culture that values learning throughout life. We talked about our vision of Scotland that invests in and develops and fully harnesses those skills of people at all stages of their lives, that raises leadership skills and fair work to the levels of the best, and that scales up that work-based learning with a focus on digital, green and meta skills that I think you've already talked about this morning, including self-management, collaboration and innovation, which are themes coming through very strongly this morning. So to just unpack that a little bit more, there was kind of 3 major asks, if you like, that we should, first of all, transform our workplaces in Scotland by closing that leadership skills gap, as I've said, with other countries and becoming that world-leading fair work nation. So what do we need to do to get there? Well, all of us, the government, employers, colleges, universities and training providers, but also that wider educational landscape needs to do that major push to raise those leadership and management skills, including expansion of bite-size training, especially for SMEs and for the voluntary sector, and for example on innovation processes, progressive working practices, and organisational resilience. And that we've got quite a strong stakeholder network, with organisations like the IOD, but all sorts of organisations who are in this leadership and management training space. So if you look at how fast we've had to evolve as managers, we did a fascinating event with BT right at the beginning of the pandemic about how we were behaving differently, about how as managers, because of the way that we were working online in teams, how we were having to manage people differently, how we were having to think much more about the pastoral care of the people that we work with, and that keeping our employees and our clients and customers safe. So there was so much learning through the pandemic, and unlearning I thought was really interesting, that thinking. So secondly, we talked about working together on plans and investment, backed up by that investment to have these modern workplaces. So including support for workplaces and their workforces to adapt to those technologies to increase productivity, again in accordance with fair work principles. So we've learned a heck of a lot about new ways of flexible working. It's just extraordinary how we've changed how we work, isn't it, over the last couple of years? So let's keep the good bits of what we've learned. So the other kind of set of acts is around scaling up demand for and participation in that work-based learning on the job, learning while we're doing, and that immediate focus on digital data and green skills. We've got incredibly ambitious climate change targets. We're going to have to move heck of a fast to get there and upskill and reskill and retrain people that are already in the workforce. So we talked about the idea that emerged from our members was an upskilling and lifelong learning fund, and as part of a new skills wallet that would enable everyone to invest in education and training right throughout our working lives, and supporting just technological and zero economy transitions. And then the second ask really under that work-based learning theme is really around building on the apprenticeship family, helping more SMEs to take on apprentices and introduce new flexi-job apprentices. Our workplaces are crying out for apprentices and for new workers. We did a really interesting event thinking about skills from all sorts of different angles, but the message was coming over to us loud and clear. The war on talent is over. The talent has won. And actually, people, we're in a marketplace that employers are short of workers with the right talents. Actually, workers can afford to be a wee bit more choosy and are going to be making quite a few demands on you as an employer to think about how you're going to look after them and invest in them and do all the things that good employers have always done. Look after your folk, invest in their training and upskilling and learning right throughout their lives. And then the final part of our asks, if you like, was about transforming content delivery and investment in education and skills. And we've heard from James and Tim some of the ways in which you can do that, but really to make sure that we are able to meet those future needs of learners and the economy. So again, we talked about a new digital utilisation plan for education and training, including workforce skills, digital data and technology infrastructures, teaching models and learning that can really harness opportunities to renew progress on excellence and equity in Scottish education, and access to all for that social innovation, entrepreneurial and nature-based learning. I think, James, you really began, to emphasise that importance of co-production. And actually, if we're going to be in that co-producing space, we have to equip our young people with the right skills around that. So that was very, very supportive of that thinking. So in terms of asks and ambitions for the SCQF to support that change, as you say, the Muir report identifies the important aspects there, that cohesive learner journey, the way in which the framework is widening access to those lifelong educational opportunities, but that recognition of prior learning and parity of esteem across that assessed learning, and that real embedding of SCQF within the education system. But there's so many obvious opportunities for that terrific asset that we have in SCQF to contribute to this, and that independence absolutely crucial in that space that is going to be about working together collaboratively. We've got a heck of a lot to achieve in the next 10 years if we have a hope in hell of being able to continue to play a role globally and to give the people of Scotland a quality of life that we want and need them to have, so that we can be a successful and happy country. And SCQF is a vital part of that picture. So thanks very much for having me along and for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks very much. I think real insight in there around resilient economy, the valuing learning, the transforming workplaces and economic growth. And yes, I'm sure all of us have had to transform our workplaces, and we're in a very different place now than we were 2 years ago. And like Tim, I think we need to unlearn some of that, and we need to relearn some of that if we really want to move forward. I do have questions for you. You'll be pleased to know. So I'm going to James first. And James, the question for you is, will the Funding Council further encourage a broader range of access routes to tertiary education through SCQF credit rated education? So things not SQA provision, but other things that are credit rated.
So in essence, our interest is to make sure the right learning is in the right place at the right time. So if that is part of that solution, then absolutely. We want to make sure that providers that we fund in the Scotland's colleges and universities work closely with a range of different partners. Now, there's lots of this activity already happens across Scotland, so there are fantastic examples of where colleges and universities work hand in glove with employers of all different types and all different sizes to design, not just to hear what they want and try to produce it, but to design, to co-deliver and to engage learners in ways which work for the individual learners and also for the businesses. That's not least through apprenticeships, but not just through apprenticeships. Lots of programmes in Scotland embrace work-based learning. For example, our nursing programmes, dentistry programmes, medical programmes. All of these programmes are using the SCQF to describe learning, to understand learning, and to drive partnerships. But wherever and however there can be productive partnership which delivers what people need and what our businesses and communities need, we are in support of it. I should say it's for institutions largely to proceed with those partnerships, and it's for us to make sure that we are comfortable that institutions have the right variety of partnerships to deliver what Scotland, what learners and what our communities need.
Thank you, James. The second question is for you, Tim, and that is young people need to understand the system well enough to be able to use it and to challenge it and to benefit from it. Can the SCQF support continuity and avoid disruption in that space, or are there other things that we need to do in order to ensure that learners have access to the right information?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, and that's behind the premise behind the question, and it makes me think about the phrase that we've often used, hard to reach young people or widening access to involve others, where it's actually the focus should be on why is the system being narrow and why is the system not communicating well. And it's a bit like that, isn't it, in terms of the premise of the question. It's kind of saying, well, how do we communicate better? And I think it's inevitably that is about co-creating again and going back to speak to learners, to discuss that together, to put that in the language that's relevant. And part of that is modernization as well. It's all of the TikTok, it's all of the Instagram, it's all of the different ways of communicating and making things really accessible and bite-sized. And the best creators of that are the learners that are involved in it. So from SCQF, I think it's maybe just having time and capacity to step into that space and work with organisations who have real expertise in working with children and young people. There will be people in the youth work sector, there will be other sectors too who are doing a great job of co-creating. activities and resources with children and young people, and putting it in a way that is understandable. I think things like your school ambassadors programs and that working in other places continue to build on some of those things, which are about having people locally that are involved or engaged in understanding, being the communicators, those that already work with, rather than people being kind of parachuted in to describe that.
Thanks, Tim. Sara, the one for you is really around kind of what is the employer ask, I guess. And it is just, given the description that you set out there, the importance of work-based learning, is enough being done to recognise skills in the workplace as distinct from maybe qualifications? And is there more that we could be doing in that space? What might that look like?
Almost certainly, because I think, anecdotally, the evidence that we have from employers is, when we're getting young people from educational institutions, actually we're needing them to unlearn some things and to relearn some of the things that we would like them to know. One of the steps that I did think was very helpful actually was the work that Skills Development Scotland did on meta skills. Do I like the name? I'm not thrilled about it. I also am not keen on the term soft skills, because actually these are generally the harder skills. But actually, even through the experience, and I'm sure as parents we all recognise that yes, there's qualifications there, but when they're getting involved in their first interviews post a sort of formal education, actually you'll find that the informal education and the Saturday job, and that is where they have the evidence base to talk about those meta skills. I worked for a professional body before coming to SCDI, and what we really recognised was that the civil engineers, the ones that had come through the apprenticeship process, were actually the best engineers because they had worked on site and they understood how things worked. And academically, if they went on to take a higher education qualification, they were the ones that came out the first. So I think that blend of workplace and college, university is increasingly important. So I think that work that has been done in terms of recognising those meta skills is very important. I think there's an awful lot more that we need to do, and better language to describe them, because I think they're the kind of things that employers would describe as, I want them to turn up, I want them to be able to get on with people, I want them to understand that sometimes they'll have to deal with difficult managers or difficult colleagues, and how they navigate all that. That's part of their wider lifelong learning that helps them with that. But it also, you talked, Tim, about that personal resilience. Our young people have had the most appalling time in the last couple of years. And actually, those 2 years, 2 years is a very long time in a young person's life in terms of missing out on those formative life experiences and those examples that they can bring to an employer about a time when they have. So actually, I think as employers, there's probably a bit of work to be done in terms of how can employers help young people with that process. So I think there's a lot to be done in that space of the recognition of meta skills and calling them something better for a start.
Thanks. Yes, I think we've been through soft skills, core skills, meta skills. We've not quite cracked it. I think we all buy into the fact that they're very central to, well, back to Tim's point, to the 4 capacities, to a good and effective learner and a confident individual, but then becomes a confident worker. So yeah, I think we just need to find better ways of hardwiring those in and a better way of explaining what it is we're trying to do. However, can I thank you, panel, as I draw to a close. I hope everyone who listened in today found that useful. I think we did get 3 such different perspectives, and yet we got so many common themes coming through around the importance of skills, around the importance of recognising skills, around the change that's with us and will be with us for some time, and the need to make sure that as institutions, individuals and workplaces, we find resilient ways of coping with that. And I do like Tim's learn, unlearn and relearn. So thank you very much for agreeing to be with us today. Thank you very much for those who put questions. I'm sorry we didn't get them all answered, but we'll try and answer some of those in the chat. And I'm now going to hand you back to Ruth.
Thank you, Aileen. And I'd echo your thanks to the panel. James, Tim and Sara, you've got me busy scribing and thinking of things in the background and connectivity of how this is going to work in my world as I look to people that are supporting us selling anything from bamboo chairs to bananas. So, you know, really, really insightful. I totally echo what you're saying, Sara. Our young people have really struggled. The last 2 years is a massive percentage of their lives. So we are looking at how we change our recruitment process so we don't disadvantage and we can still bring out the best, because we know those 2 years have been not what we would have expected. And we're going to see that play through for years to come. I'm going to move on now to our first workshop sessions, which will be taking place in the different workshop rooms. On the top of the ribbon, you can see where the workshops are and you can click in through there. The workshop sessions will be starting. There's free to choose which ones you go into, and you wish to join the ones that are the same sessions in the afternoon and the morning. So I'd strongly recommend you flip them unless you hear one that is so exciting you want to go back for more in the afternoon. Details of the sessions are in the Zoom link and available in the agenda. So you can go in through either routes and you can access them in a few moments. Just to remind you, we've got a schools ambassador session, learning pathways that support DYW and developing skills, micro-credentialing, which we heard a little bit about this morning, a national approach. That was really good food for thought. Recognising skills of the future workforce. That's front and centre of a lot of people's minds. RPL, which is really key because of the way we're operating now, routes to a positive destination. And finally, future-proofing skills with the SCQF. I don't think there's enough hours in the workshop session for myself, so I'm going to log into a couple of them and hopefully get the highlights on the others. Once those sessions are finished, they will finish at 10 to 1. We're going to go straight into a break and we'll be looking for you to come back to us at 1:35 where we'll have a session from the Cabinet Secretary for Education. So I'd ask you to enjoy your workshop sessions. Please come back promptly at 1:35, having had a great workshop and a fabulous lunch, so that we can enjoy the Cabinet Secretary session this afternoon. The Cabinet Secretary session will be by the main auditorium. The workshops are by the different workshop links, which you can see in the agenda. During any breaks, we're obviously going to be playing those video clips. So if you miss them the first time around because you're busy getting a brew, they will be on during a break for after the workshop while you're having your lunch. It might help the digestion. Enjoy your workshop sessions. I'll look forward to seeing you back here at 1:35. Thank you very much.